Get ready for the 3324 podcast, where lifelong friends Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber share their love of all things music and movies. Dean has directed short films and is a music trivia buff, and Eric, trained in audio engineering, brings his extensive knowledge of music and film to the conversation as they discuss, debate, and celebrate their favorite albums, films, and much more.
Welcome to the 3324 podcast live edition on a Wednesday, like we always do. Hot in July. At least it is in New York. How's it down there?
It's pretty hot, pretty humid. AC's cranking.
Hotter than hell.
Yeah, AC's cranking, but it's working hard because the humidity just seeps right in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
If you guys hear a little noise in the background, it's because there's a fan blowing directly on me. So that's just to keep myself my temperature moderated and leveled out. So I don't want to pass out, especially on a live event. So if you see me go like that and I don't get back up,
so you got your
continue without me.
Do you have your ice cold glass next to you, Dean? Are you going to start licking your glass and all that kind of stuff?
I'm not gonna lick the glass, but that I'm not sure about licking the glass, but
just like rubbing it on your.
I might. It depends on how bad it gets here, but I could tell you that our live event tonight is sponsored by 3324 Podcast. So they are sponsoring this tonight. So we thank the 3324 Podcast team for sponsoring this live event.
Nice.
And hopefully we've got people. I know there's a little bit of a delay between when we start and then when it goes live for Facebook. But if you are out there, please go ahead and say hi in the chat. Let us know that you're out there and we can start saying hello to everybody and seeing how everybody's doing and if you're keeping cool. So go ahead and give us some highs and some halos.
Hello.
They're out there.
They
might be. They may or may not be out there. So we're waiting. In the meantime, so what we're talking about tonight is, as you can see down in the crawl, bring us your worst. So this is another fun.
Elizabeth Berg. Hello, Elizabeth.
Hey, there she is. Hey, Elizabeth. How are you? Thank you for making the time and hanging out with us. So tonight we're going to start our conversation because as I learned the last show we did is that the conversation goes in many different directions. So we're going to start, at least we're going to plant a seed and we'll start here and then who knows where we'll end up. And tonight we're going to be talking about when bad albums happen to great artists. And I've been thinking about it quite a bit. How about you?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. And
first and foremost, I think it happens to everyone at some point in their career. I mean,
it depends. I think, you know what? I think after we do the bring us to your worst, I think we can maybe make the case for artists that maybe had a perfect run.
That's a stretch,
right? So I think there's one group that comes to mind immediately, and it's not the Beatles. But there is one group that comes to mind immediately that you could make a case that had a perfect run. But if there's anybody else out there, say hello. Just throw a hi, hello in the chat. Let's see how everybody's doing.
Yep.
And then we'll get rolling. So as I was thinking about it, when I was thinking about the subject of bad albums by great artists, I was trying to figure out if there was a pattern to it. Like, was it something that usually happened on the tail end of someone's career, of a band's career? Like, do they just wear out or not keep up with the times? And then, that album is perceived as really crappy. Or, hey, Dwight, how are you? Welcome.
Dwight Burke.
Thanks for coming in. Or is it bands that have really crappy debut albums, perhaps, but then become really great afterwards, but just kind of are a little wobbly at first? Or does it happen kind of in the middle, where they have a good run, then there's just one anomaly, and then they're able to reset? So I was trying to think, and I couldn't really, the groups that I selected or thought about didn't really fit into, they kind of fit closer into the middle of the career pattern for the most part. Like the ones I found weren't like final albums or debut albums. What about you?
Pretty much the same. I mean, I think certain heading into, if it's a longevity, it could be an issue. Heading into another decade, certainly, artists that we loved in the 70s, making their way into the 80s, quite a bit of a bad, I would say with some cases
Hey,
bad,
Kelly.
some cases terrible, some cases,
So,
okay.
you think maybe that sometimes it's bands that try to
Well,
adapt
they
or
try to adapt
or pivot with the times and do
that's
something
right.
that's not
And sometimes they just
normally in their wheelhouse.
and they just can't find their footing.
Okay.
Depending on the tools that are being used for the day, everybody was trying to play with all the new tools in the 80s, but it didn't always work
Mhm.
for certain people. So,
Okay.
so
Yeah,
I think that could be a factor. I think there's uh, certainly, like you said, an artist that's been around for a really long time, sort of winding down in their career. Maybe it all depends on the choices they make of who they're playing with too.
Mhm.
If it's a solo artist, uh, putting together some kind of a band that just doesn't quite fit what he's
Mhm.
doing or she's doing or whatever. Sometimes it's the producer, sometimes it's management that forces an artist to do something that they may not want to do, but that you have to
Yeah.
do this in order to
Yep.
survive,
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
thing.
And there's
So
a little bit of that too.
yeah.
Kylie Harris checking in.
Hi
Hey, Kylie.
Kai, how are you?
Hello. Hello. Yeah. So there's a lot of different reasons, and some of it could be that. Some of it could be
Yeah.
a I don't know if it happens as much now as it used to happen, where artists will submit their album to the label, and the label might come back and say, we're not releasing this.
Yeah,
We don't like this, or replace these 4 songs with something else.
that's right. Yep.
Sometimes that works in their favor because maybe it is a weak release,
Hmm.
WEAK release, and they're forced to go back and really kind of come up and kind of put their nose to the grindstone and
Yeah.
work on it. Or sometimes the record company is wrong, and maybe what was pulled was probably better, but the record company is looking to make money, so they're looking for stuff that's going to sell in the
Yeah.
end. So you've got this push and pull of the artist, either trying to stay on their path or
Hmm.
try different things. A lot of times it's one of the albums I have is the artist trying something different, and it doesn't work.
Right.
It just was a miss.
Yeah.
So why don't we start with the chat? And since Elizabeth was first in, Elizabeth, why don't you let us know if you have a group, a good group that put out a bad album. So if you can kick us off, Elizabeth, we'll save ours for last.
Yeah.
And if anybody else is out there, throw a hello in the chat so we know you're there.
Mhm.
But Elizabeth, give us something and we'll get started. And I've got on my list is pretty much, it's not really obscure. I'm known to be obscure with some of my picks sometimes, but the ones I chose, and one was suggested to me, so I took that one as well.
Okay.
That these are pretty major artists and one really big artist. So
Well, mine's kind of a lot of artists kind of grouped together
mhm.
in a sense. There's a particular type of music that I think you know where I'm going with
Is this going to be Genesis and Phil Collins?
Well, they could be included in the mix, but yeah,
Okay. All right.
there are specifics, and
All right. Well, why don't you give us one while we're waiting for Elizabeth? Why don't you throw one out there, Dwight? If you've got one, Kelly, Kylie,
Yeah.
let's get the chat going. Throw something out there that
well,
that is a misfire from.
for me,
a band.
I'm a big fan of prog rock. So a lot of the bands of the '70s, individual bands that were doing their own thing. They each band had their own sound, their own a lot of virtuosic type musicians kind of playing over. And with groups like Yes, there was a sort of a turnstile thing of members joining, leaving. But with each album, it was bringing in new people to see what they can do.
Mhm.
The '80s came around, and there was a total departure from everything they did. It was they had to keep up with the sort of the synth pop thing. So so a lot of these other artists were trying that. Yes was maybe one of the biggest success with 90125 with Trevor Horn, they managed to pull it off. However, you had all these like splinter groups happening, like Emerson Lake and GTR with Steve Hackett from Genesis and Steve Howe from Yes, and I had them all. I bought every splinter group. I had probably more bad albums in my cassette case than good albums
from all those prog guys just mixing and matching, and
just from a loyalty standpoint, because I really like these people.
But from them just like mixing and matching members and just trying all these different different things. So we've got Elizabeth. She's laying the smackdown. She's starting early, and she's gonna be poking the stick at Eric. So Jefferson Starship from being Jefferson Airplane. Which are you saying that Jefferson Airplane was better than Jefferson Starship and Genesis and Phil Collins? And it's widely known that the very, 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 very first Genesis album, from Genesis to Revelation, is just known. It's just not a great album.
No, it wasn't.
That was one of those ones where the debut album was a misfire, where the band is trying to figure it out.
It was management. It was the manager at the time
get it going.
You guys got to do these this type of song.
Yeah,
these were like pop songs, and they admitted that they didn't like what they were doing at that point. So
I think what Elizabeth is I liked Jefferson Airplane, I like Jefferson Starship, but then when they became Starship, I think that's when the wheels fell off the wagon. After we built this city, and then Grace Slick left, and Paul Kantner, everyone just kind of abandoned ship, and Mickey Thomas was the only one left, and I think that's when that whole then it was done. It was time to retire. Kelly, Jewel, Intuition album, there's more to the story. I'm going to tell you, my favorite Jewel song is Intuition, oddly enough. I'm like the only person that liked that new sound from her. I enjoyed the new sound.
I like the video. That's about it.
It's the worst because her mom bankrupted her and made the Intuition deal with the Razor brand. So
there's that management thing where her mom made her do this. And, it's not her style. And from that point on, a lot of people say that she didn't quite come back from that. The
Intuition Razor.
She went
I dug that sound though. I dug the departure from the singer-songwriter, the strumming, the coffee house artist, and all that kind of stuff, that she just really kind of embraced a whole new sound. And I was like, wow, I enjoyed that song Intuition, really. Elizabeth, Zach and I talk about how much he hates We Built the City. And I agree, things went down there from Jefferson Airplane. They did, and Jefferson Airplane did reform, not reform, like got good again or whatever, but they reformed Jefferson Airplane with the original members briefly after that, to kind of regain maybe some of the respect. Cool. So I've got one, and the one I'm going to talk about first is really easy because we just talked about it on the Queen episode.
There you go.
The works is the album Hot Space from Queen is an absolute misfire, kind of right, almost somewhat in the middle of their discography, and they came off their biggest album to date, which was The Game. That was a monster album for them. It was their breakthrough. With another one, Bites the Dust, and Crazy Little Thing Called Love. They were on top of the world, and then they decide to veer off and take the next exit and decide to embrace the dance stuff, which had, in my opinion, had already passed. That had come and gone, but they decided to embrace that, and it left a lot of people scratching their heads, and that was kind of a little bit of a Jewel situation where they had some difficulty recovering. And like we talked about in the episode, Live Aid was the thing that probably the only thing that would have helped them. And it absolutely did, like their performance, but like the album itself is just kind of bizarre. For them.
I think I pointed out too, Bill, but it was kind of inevitable for them to kind of slip in there and try it. At least there was a little bit of that, stuff on The Game, and there was sort of that funky kind of thing happening already. So there, it wasn't, probably that much of a departure. Whereas Jewel, she
was a totally different sound,
a folk sound into like this electronica,
dancey
kind of thing, which is, where did this come from? So,
absolutely.
But
absolutely. So what else do you have?
There was one I know. I kind of got into them really late, and this is our friend Andrew Cremines is a big fan of Metallica,
Mhm.
and one of their later albums, he was really, I think he was at the time was real excited for, and it was the Saint Anger album,
Mhm.
and I heard it myself, and I thought this is horrible. This record, the recording, it sounded like it was recorded in a tin can.
Uh-huh.
It was just a really horrible recording. I just remember, and it was just a flop. I think I'm pretty sure, in the fan base, but from me, just not as not even a huge fan, I recognize it as this is not up to their standard. So that's
Mhm.
another one for me. That's a specific one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
and it just wasn't.
yep.
It had that real tinny kind of. There was no bottom end to it. There was just from the recordings. I'm not even talking about the songs or, but just from the recording aspect of it, I thought it sounded like a horrible,
Yeah,
horrible album. Yeah.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
Dwight's checking in the Cars' early albums, then hit the clunker with Door to
Door to
Door.
Door.
And that's another great example, because
Mhm.
the album before that, Heartbeat City, what you might think, that song Magic, I mean, Drive was on there, so they were coming
Yeah.
off their biggest album, arguably. I mean, the Cars they had a lot of those great hits in the 70s, Best Friend's Girl, and Let the Good Times Roll and all that,
Yeah.
and then they were working up to like their explosion, and they exploded, and then their next album was like, it had You Are the Girl on it, and that
Yeah.
was it. I don't know if they had their moment perhaps, and then the moment passed.
Mhm.
I don't know if Heartbeat City was of its time. I really like that the opener on that album, Hello Again. I always loved that song. It was
Yeah.
just so quirky and so strange, but that's a great example as well, is a band on top of the world, and then the second one, and meaning the second album after their monster,
Mhm.
doesn't do it. It's almost like a curse.
Yeah.
The
Well,
only
that
one
would
that
happen.
navigated it was Fleetwood Mac successfully. One
Well,
of the few.
they would, I go back to Yes. I use them as an example too. Like
Yes. Yes.
90125
Yes. What?
was a hit. The sound was great, but then they tried to do it again,
Yeah.
with the follow-up record with Trevor Rabin, and again, that was, not a good follow-up at
Especially
all.
in the 80s, because
You
that
know,
stuff evolved so quickly, and
yeah,
and that whole electronica and that whole
yeah,
process sound kind of came. It was popular, and then things got like slicker. The Rick Astley kind of stuff started to take over, and
right,
Jody Watley and Taylor Dane, and that kind of stuff really started to dominate the charts, and
yeah,
it changed a little, and those bands that were able to kind of pop up, like the Moody Blues. The Moody Blues actually popped up, but they were able to navigate into like the adult contemporary
hmm
with their Wildest Dreams and stuff like that. So
Well,
they navigated it
that's
pretty
another
good.
example. Like I love Long Distant Voyager, but the follow-up to that album,
Yeah.
I didn't care for as much.
Yep.
Just like trying to repeat the same thing, and sometimes that doesn't work either. It's just
Yeah.
more of the same, and it's just it doesn't quite have the hooks that a certain album might have had.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Breaking through that barrier, breaking through that door, and then trying to maintain that sound. It a lot of times it didn't work.
Yeah.
For
Yeah. You
things.
figure, oh, we got pop, we got a hit with this, so let's repeat
Yeah,
it. And it's a fickle thing.
yeah,
It's the public is fickle.
yeah.
And speaking of which, one of the ones that I selected was the album Hot Streets by Chicago.
Mm,
Significant because they embraced like kind of a disco-y sound on this, but something significant happened in between this and their previous albums. First of all, it's the first Chicago album to have a title and not a number. That doesn't really mean much,
yeah.
but it's the first album without Terry Kath.
Okay.
So he had passed away, accidentally killed himself, and his influence, without his influence, whether he was on his way, there's reports he was on his way out anyway. He was leaving. He wanted to do something else, but still, without his influence, they really embraced a more of an up-tempo disco-y sound, poppy
Mhm.
sound, and that put them on the path. That album was like, they would kind of come back in the 80s with, Stay the Night. And then
Yeah,
they became ballads, Hard Habit to Break. Once they started working with
Right.
David Foster,
Right.
those albums were popular though, but Hot Streets was kind of the miss in there and that's because of personnel change.
Mhm.
Like that had a detrimental effect on it. And I have another misfire that has that too as a result. So anybody else out there, if you're out there, if you're in the chat, drop a hello in, and also, or if you just want to skip the hello and cut right to the chase and drop in and let us know what album,
bad album,
what album is a misfire.
Yeah.
And it's okay if you have it. It's okay that you had it and listened to it.
We all
as
do.
long as we're acknowledging it now.
Yeah.
It's okay. This is our confessional.
Well, that's the thing. It's like if you're
confessional.
My thing is, if you were a fan of someone, especially at a younger age, they could do no wrong, right? You got that thing in your head where, you embrace everything they do, and
Yep.
No, But then there's also it's also very subjective. I mean, you just like you mentioned Chicago. I prefer the early days. I mean, for me, that's Chicago. Like the ballady stuff, just no.
Yeah.
And we talked about Billy Joel.
Yep.
I didn't mention this in the actual episode, but I don't like anything past probably An Innocent Man.
Mhm.
Any of those albums, those later albums, I don't like any of that stuff because it's
The
not
Bridge,
to me. It's
Stormfront.
not Billy Joel.
Yeah,
A lot of guitar, a lot of he's trying different things, and it didn't work for him. He was trying to do something. I guess I don't think he knew exactly where he fit in, and stuff like the River of Dreams, and he's trying to do sort of that African thing, like a Paul Simon, or even Phil Collins was doing that. Didn't quite work for Billy Joel though. You know, and of course we didn't start the fire. Well, I always
it's an iconic song. I mean, you have to give him credit for just writing such a complex song and giving a history lesson at the same time, and fitting it all in.
He kind of became.
You got to give the guy credit for it though.
He kind of became a caricature to me with the music videos and the shades, and he's just sitting there that's not Billy Joel.
Uptown Girl, come on, that's good.
Yeah. No, I mean
that was on
like I said, Innocent Man is probably his last great record for me.
Okay.
Which
was a tribute to his influences and a tribute to the 50s and doo-woppy.
So
that was a big one for him.
Yeah.
Let's see. So we were talking about, I mentioned that with Chicago, the loss of Terry Kath really changed the direction of the band. And this one's a no-brainer. This one's going to be a no-brainer. This one, and this is a double. This is like a double whammy of crap material, and it's crap. And you know what? I'm sorry, I can't even verify whether or not it's crap because I actually didn't listen to it because everyone else told me or I read that it was crap, and that's Fleetwood Mac. Okay. And so after the dismissal, firing, quitting, whatever Lindsey Buckingham did in 87, whatever happened, he didn't want to, he kicked Stevie Nicks or whatever happened. There was a fight, push, whatever, and he quit or fired. He didn't want to tour. They had the tour booked, and in true Fleetwood Mac style, this is their MO. Nothing is ever going to stop Mick Fleetwood. Nothing will ever stop him from touring with. He'll get like if I was standing in the street at the right time, he probably would have grabbed me and said, "Hey, can you hold a tambourine? Okay, you're in Fleetwood Mac."
Yeah,
that's his ethos is we're gonna find a way. So, which I was upset when that happened, but then I was also kind of glad, because Lindsey Buckingham wasn't big then. He hadn't like everyone, he hadn't had his moment yet. But it made me very glad that they had to get two guitar players to replace him. And I'm like, that's like, for me, I was like, there, that says it all right there. They needed two guys.
Something. Yeah.
They needed two guys. Right. So they put out an album called Behind the Mask, which when you look at the album cover, it looks like it's like Stevie Nicks supposed to be on the front or something, like the girl on the front.
Yeah.
I'm like, is that Stevie Nicks? Like, who is it? What is it supposed to, what's going on? And then they're on the
signify? Back. Yeah. It's a
yeah. So
very lackluster album.
Yeah. I mean,
I actually had it. I did get it.
Yeah.
And I did get the one that followed it.
Yeah. So they put out Behind the Mask, right? And that one clunks. So Stevie Nicks finally walks and said, all right, I'm getting off this sinking ship as well. And again, Fleetwood Mac style, nothing's going to stop him. So he brings in Bonnie Bramlett, Dave Mason. I mean, he's really dragging
Bonnie Bramlett is the daughter of Delaney Bramlett and Bonnie.
Yeah,
Back in the, they, back in
yeah,
the
and Dave
day.
Mason had one hit with We Just Disagree.
I gotta say,
They put an album called Time.
Yeah, and I have to say, it wasn't a bad record. I mean, it's not Fleetwood Mac.
It's not Fleetwood Mac.
If you didn't know if it was Fleetwood Mac, you would say this is pretty decent stuff because it's kind of has that, she's got her mother's voice. It's kind of like that soulful kind of rock thing going on.
But it's not the Fleetwood Mac you come to expect.
It's not. And once you find out it's Fleetwood Mac, then it's like, oh, okay, this is
then it becomes like
their last gasp.
Exactly. Like, you hit the nail on the head. If you had gotten that album unbranded and unpackaged and said, oh, listen to this, you're like, oh, this is probably a decent album. It's pretty good. It's Fleetwood Mac. Oh, it sucks.
Yeah.
like because the standard and the level is so high of what you expect from them that, even with all the drama and everything, it's just like, like they got away with it in the 70s. It was a little bit easier because Fleetwood Mac wasn't as popular before Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham joined. So they were sliding Bob Welch and Jeremy Spencer and Danny Kerwin, and they were just sliding people in and out and just recording and just kind of going with the flow. I think it might
have been like Mick Fleetwood's attempt to kind of recapture those old days.
And he still does it. They fired Lindsey Buckingham, and they get again they get two people to replace him, and
Neil Finn from Crowded House. That's a head scratcher.
And Mike Campbell, who's not a guitar, he's not even in the style of Lindsey Buckingham.
Right.
It's not even
Petty's guitar player.
Yeah, he's got a totally different style.
And that was Stevie Nicks all.
Yeah, of course.
She most definitely
trying to recreate the Heartbreakers. So Elizabeth, don't get me wrong. I love Genesis and I love Phil Collins. Once he left, though, I wasn't as big of a fan. So Phil Collins left Genesis, and they had that one album, Calling All Stations.
Yeah.
Which was a turkey as well.
Pretty much.
Right.
And they tried to tour. They started the tour, but then nobody was going to this tour. And so they had to cancel.
And isn't that ironic, though? That is very ironic. And Genesis is a tale of that irony. Is they're known back in the day. Peter Gabriel was the face, literally the face and the voice and the costume of the band. They replaced that singer. They replaced him with Phil Collins, who was an unknown. He was an unknown quantity at that point. They had no clue if this was going to work.
Right.
They plug through, they plow through this and they just keep plugging away at albums, and they hit it big. And then Phil Collins leave and they replace him. And they probably figured, we did it once, we could do it again. Right. And that happened. And another example in this vein is Van Halen.
Yeah.
Is Van Halen 3, right? They and this was probably the biggest unlikeliest success story, right? Is Van Halen, David Lee Roth leaves after their 1984 album, Head Scratcher. They get Sammy Hagar. Who would have thunk? They get even bigger, and they get even more of a monster band. It really launched them into the stratosphere. And then Sammy Hagar leaves. So all right, well, we'll just get somebody else. I mean, we've done it. We did it we replaced David Lee Roth, so we can replace Sammy Hagar. So they get Gary Sharon from Extreme. And the stuff wasn't horrible. He had a thankless job. I mean, he's trying to follow two monster vocalists and two monster phases of their career.
Let's put it that way. I mean, I think
and phases of their career
voice than David Lee Roth.
Yeah, he might,
be honest,
but
he doesn't have the personality or the frontman status that David Lee Roth had. No.
And David Lee Roth had that. Van Halen had their own encapsulated career of major success, and then the Sammy Hagar era had their own encapsulated success, mega success, right? So they figured, okay, well, we did it once, we did it twice, let's do it again. And Gary Sharon was just a misfire. It just didn't work.
Yeah, I mean, it's. You don't know if you wanted to. You appreciate the effort. You got to give these guys credit. Sometimes it's just that's odd, but
sometimes it's going to sometimes you go to the well one too many times, right?
Yeah. No,
you keep plugging away, and there's like you said, there's a faction of diehard fans that will just buy anything no matter what, and they'll usually acknowledge it.
And just find some excuse to just, oh, well, they were, whatever.
Elizabeth, I'm going to show my young self But another good example was 1D, right? Major hits in 2011-13, but once Midnight Memories was done, the band turmoil leading to the breakup made the rest of the albums not as successful, right? So, when there's the infighting and people get a feeling that things aren't, as rosy as it's portrayed, some people might start to walk away from that,
Yeah.
and say, yeah, it's I'm moving on, and some of those bands may have a shelf life as well, especially with that one. They splintered, and everybody pretty much was going their own way and having their own career as well.
Mhm.
So, Kai wasn't a fan of Generation Swine album of Motley Crue. Personally love all of Crue's stuff except for that one for some reason. Vince Neil just did a show. Next year there's going to be it's Motley Crue and Def Leppard, and it's going to be like a gigantic tour. And Vince Neil literally just did a solo show about a week and a half. I don't even think it's a week ago. Go find it on YouTube. He actually ended the show early. He started to do Girls, 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 like the final song or whatever. And his voice was so shot. He actually said, guys, I can't sing. My voice is shot. Have a good night. Take care. And like the backing track of Girls, Girl is still playing. The band is still, they don't know what's going on. It's the most uncomfortable. It's cringy.
Wow.
Go to you. It just literally happened. And they're supposed to be going on this gigantic tour with Def Leppard next year. And yeah, so poor, and he was supposedly going to get in shape and he was going to lose weight and this and the other thing. And he looked like he has for the past couple of years, which is basically like me.
I think you look a little bit better than he does.
I don't know. From if we're going from here up, sure,
well,
but So yeah, check that out. It is so cringy. So what do you have, Eric? Would you have another one?
Well, no, well, I had the Fleetwood Mac. I had.
Oh, good. I stole it.
I did have Hot Space on my list.
Oh wow!
So there you go.
There you go.
I do have another prog, Pink Floyd, hot on the heels of The Wall, and the film, the Alan Parker film, which featured a brand new song in the film.
Our sponsor.
When the Tigers broke free, appeared on this album called The Final Cut.
Yep.
And I was really, really looking forward to this record, and it was just horrible. I mean, it was just Roger Waters basically, throughout the whole.
I like that song, Not Now John, though. I really
Not
dug
Now
that.
John that's David Gilmour.
Yeah,
because that's
I like that song.
That's probably the best.
I think I took the cassette from you.
You probably did.
I don't know if you gave it to me or
I think I did, and I said I don't want this back.
Yeah, because I certainly didn't. I certainly didn't borrow that. I mean, I didn't buy that cassette. I'm pretty sure I didn't buy it, but I heard Not Now John and dug it, and it ended up in my collection somehow.
And then, of course, later on when Roger Waters left the band, David Gilmour, decided Pink Floyd's going to continue, and Momentary Lapse of Reason to me was a disappointment.
Well, wasn't that the one with Learn to Fly?
But there's some good stuff on there,
like
but it just wasn't quite there. I did like the Division Bell better. I thought that was a better.
But they did have a resurgence. I mean, they kind of because they got everybody back except for Roger Waters, so it wasn't like David Gilmour and
no, it was the band.
X, Y, and Z people.
But without him, it's one of those things. Are they better with him or without? That's a factor too. Like members.
Final Cut was so disappointing.
Yeah. You remember I think we got it at the same time. As a matter of fact, we were really excited about that record coming out, and I had just gotten into Pink Floyd at that time in a big way.
It's like why put the brakes on. It's like
now it's time to start going backwards.
Here comes the clunker.
There's Animals and Wish You Were Here, and then of course everybody knows
Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah. But then I started going even further back. So sometimes you need to do that.
The infighting there just got too much too, and it starts to take a detrimental effect. One that is often mentioned, but I dig it, and it's one of my favorites, is the Long Run by the Eagles. A lot of people say, well, that's like their worst album, their weakest album, because they were pretty much done with each other. But I tell you, it's the first Eagles album that I bought. Like I bought that album just because of everything that was on it that was so great. Like despite the infighting and just that, at that point they were done with each other. I was like, I don't think you would have known.
No,
I liked it so much.
No, I think there were a couple of songs off that record I felt were a little bit, not
Chris Navarro,
quite
what's your worst from
there.
favorite band?
Just-
Elizabeth Beth is co-hosting, so she's helping us out, and she's calling people out on the chat, so she's monitoring the chat for us. I'll tell you,
Beth Navarro, what's your pick? Do you have one?
Yeah, we need one from you as well. I'll give you the most disappointing album for me.
Okay.
Because I'm one of those people that liked everything that the artist did, and I was fully on board. And then one album came out, and it just kind of like it like shattered. And you and I had extensive conversations about it when it came out, and that's Lindsey Buckingham. And when his album Under the Skin came out,
Under the Skin,
it got under my skin. I was like, literally, right? I was so annoyed. I was so like disappointed because it's the same old thing. Like he puts out, like he does great work with Fleetwood Mac. He does even better work solo. He experiments, he expands, he does all this crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And then Fleetwood Mac gets back together and he gives his best material and then shelves his solo albums for that. And then those things get left. So then he put out this album Under the Skin, and it was very, the guitar runs and the breathy vocals, and it was really like, this is what he was into, but underproduced. And I like the overproduced. I like the Lindsey Buckingham, Brian Wilson produced.
But you have to admit that was the art of it. That was the fact that he decided to do it so underwhelmingly. Was the difference. And I kind of like the fact that he went back to those sort of folky type roots. And he found the guitar again, and I always, first and foremost, I always admired his guitar playing over everything.
I think it was a response to everybody all of a sudden discovering that, like, because he was doing big love acoustic and going.
It was a big deal at the time. I mean, we're talking, so
everybody was so into it.
Artists were around, and you had a lot of younger artists doing this kind of thing.
Yep.
And I think he was, Lindsey trying to be,
trying to
hip and in the scene, like most definitely, I think he was speaking. To that audience. So,
and in related news, he just announced that he's got a new solo album coming out, simply titled Lindsey Buckingham, and he just released a new song called "I Don't Mind." And Eric texted me,
I think it's
earlier today, right? Or was it yesterday? It was today.
Yeah,
it was today. And he's like, "How do you like the song?" And I said,
your thoughts.
Yeah, he's like, your thoughts? And I said, I really liked it because it is a return.
It's back to that form.
It's got the best of both worlds. It is a little bit more, it does embrace the guitar stuff, but it's got the weird vocals, the production, the bouncing of the vocals, which I love when he does like the Jeff Lynne, when he spends time in the studio, he's got that same work ethic of the weird stuff and the quirky stuff that all fits. And that's what I love about Lindsey Buckingham, because that's what everybody always never understood. They always wanted like Christine McVie songs and Stevie Nicks songs, and then Lindsey Buckingham stuff was just always so weird, which is what I loved. And I love that about him.
He was the counterbalance.
Yeah. And that's what I loved. So this new song is good, and I'm really digging. I'm going to have to listen to it a lot more. But as soon as I started hearing at first the vocals were breathy, and I'm like, all right, you got to cut the guy a break. He had heart surgery. His vocal cords are damaged, or maybe he recorded it before. We don't know.
Like he back in this, I mean, I was always admired how he manages to go so high in the studio.
Yeah, and then at the very end, he started singing. He got away from the breathy at the very end fade out. So, geeking out. Lindsey Buckingham is touring, so he's not listening, but we're plugging him anyway. So, anybody else in the chat? Like, let's hear some more. I have like one or two more, and then what we'll do maybe is we'll get into artists that batted 1,000, that had perfect. I've one specific group. And I don't think Eric's going to be able to dispute it. Interestingly, this brought up with my 85-year-old mom today. She became quite engaged about it and brought up Frank Sinatra, and he made several bad albums. And she was confident that it was a result of the record company forcing him to do music he was passionate about. I think it happens to many bands and artists, right? So, the record company interfering and saying, you're going to do this, especially with new artists, if they don't have a lot of leverage, they're kind of at the mercy of the label, kind of like the Beatles were at the mercy when they first started out. It's like, you're going to do cover songs. You're going to do X amount of cover songs. And then once you get popular, you start to get a little more control. You get that leverage, and then you start to call the shots because they don't want to lose you and lose the money train. Did I miss Nick Leshy? Hey, Nick, did I miss you talking about Guns N' Roses Spaghetti Incident? No, you did not. That was the last Spaghetti Incident was the last Guns N' Roses album with the quote unquote somewhat classic lineup, except for Steven Adler, Matt Sorum, who they stole from the Cult, would join Guns N' Roses, and Spaghetti Incident was the last album that they had put out for quite some time. And then the much heralded Chinese Democracy, which became like his version of Smile, Axl Rose, did not come out for years and years and years. And when it finally came out, everyone was like, okay.
We've been waiting.
Yeah. It passed, like the time passed. Yeah. Axl Rose was like 2 generations too late. Like music had changed so much. Yeah. Any momentum that they had was gone. So, you have another one? I got one more, and it's a big one. But go ahead. Do you have one?
No.
That's it? You're tapped out? All right. This is if you think that even the biggest bands of all time are not susceptible to bad albums, I'm going to put forth the greatest band of all time, perhaps, the Beatles. And their album Yellow Submarine is a stinker.
Well, it wasn't really an album, was it? I mean,
it was a proper release from them, but one side of it was the songs that were on the album, which that were in the movie, which were kind of mostly throwaways. I mean, All You Need Is Love was written for something else, and Hey Bulldog, and Only a Northern Song. I mean, just really. And then the second side was like the score re-recorded by George Martin, but it's a Beatles album.
I think it was just the fact that they weren't really involved in the project, right? I mean, it just
they weren't involved in the making of the cartoon. I mean, they were in at the very end, but they contributed the music that would be there. But yeah, it was just kind of like, talk about a throwaway. And then Nick is referring to Guns N' Roses. It was bad that the highlight was the Hidden Manson conversing track. Bad Beatles album is still a great album. I get, like relative, sure. Yeah, if you put that relative to something else, you're right. But in the Beatles canon or their discography, when you know what, on my Spotify, like for some reason, the Yellow Submarine soundtrack comes up, and all of a sudden, like this score music comes on, and it's like the Blue Meanies Attack. I'm like, skip. I don't want to hear it. Yeah. I don't want to hear the score.
Well, they re-released it. Then they re-released it like later on, and they added all the songs that they featured in the film, which were on other albums, right? I mean, it's sort of like
because Nowhere Man was in there. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Right. I mean, there was a lot of other stuff in there, but
so it was a much
the original album is it's like one of those. I'm like, I can't.
Well, people say
Yellow Submarine equals one of my least favorite. There's Grady. Yellow Submarine, one of my least favorite Beatles songs.
People say that about Magical Mystery Tour, saying that wasn't a very good.
I like, at least it's a complete album.
It is, and I actually think following Sgt. Pepper, there are songs on that record that I actually like better than some of the songs.
Yeah, it's got I Am the Walrus. It's got Baby You're a Rich Man. Does Your Mother Know? There's a lot on there.
Yeah,
there's a lot on there. But maybe having two movie sound, Magical Mystery Tour was technically a TV show, but having two of those types of albums so close together just was, they were really just throwing everything at the wall and see if it stick. So, Sean, Grady, do you have a horrible album by a great band before we're going to move on to artists that we think batted 1,000? Tick tock. Tick tock. While Sean is thinking, let me take this opportunity to plug our newest episode coming out tomorrow of the 3324 podcast. We are talking about a classic film from 1992. And oddly enough, I hope we're not making him blush, but Sean Grady is our guest tomorrow on the episode Glengarry Ross. He does not.
I don't.
Wow. That was simple, succinct, and to the point.
Hey, there you go.
But Sean will be joining us tomorrow for our Glengarry Glen Ross episode. So definitely check that one out. If you've never seen Glengarry Glen Ross, it's based on a play by David Mamet. Doesn't get to be performed very much. David Mamet is very particular and protective of it. But the movie the play was documented in movie form with a cast unlike anything you've ever seen. It's a veritable who's who of actors. Some weren't as popular at the time, but grew to be gigantic, and some were already iconic. So definitely check that out. As always, we ask to share it with your friends, share it on your timelines. Bring on the 1000ers. All right. He's asking for it. Should I just go right for it?
Go for it.
You want me to go for it? This is the band I think did not have a miss.
Okay.
Do you want to guess?
I don't want to say ELO because I don't think that's the case.
No, because that would be personal preference. A lot of people would say there are misses. I think objectively, if you ask anybody, you would say that the Police did not have a miss. There's no stinker albums.
I don't know. I don't care for their first one. To me,
it's
weak.
Eric has to go. I think he's got an appointment, so Eric's going to be leaving.
No, just comparatively speaking, I think they really, got a lot stronger. The first release had some great songs, but it just overall, I don't think they really knew who they were.
That doesn't mean it's a bad album, though, right? They're still focusing, and it was still a strong
for their debut. It's not so great. Regatta de Blanc is a much better album. I feel
he shot me. Yeah, but that doesn't mean Outlandos is
okay. It's not terrible. Okay, so I get what you're saying.
I got that out of him. All right, Eric, I'm gonna send you a magnet for that. Thank you.
I have enough. Thank you.
Oh wait, you have a magnet. Man,
I got one in my corner right here.
Well, if anybody wants a magnet, reach out to me, give me your address, and we'll send you a magnet and some stickers. But you have to promise to put it on your car. That's the only way you're going to get one. Nick Leshy saying Weezer. That's interesting. What about their album Pinkerton? I thought that one didn't do so well. But Weezer has a weird career. I mean, they were really popular, and then they kind of had a little wane in popularity. Then they had that song Beverly Hills, and then they had like another wane in popularity. Then they got known for doing covers.
Okay.
Their cover of Africa just like took off, and they did that whole covers album, and it just did a whole, it brought Toto to a whole other level. Nirvana had limited albums, but all released were really good. So we're basically, are we talking major release or In Utero and Nevermind? You could make the case then, yeah, they had a 50-50 shot of having a bad one, so yeah, maybe, and you know what, the Police kind of fit the profile as well because they didn't put out a lot of albums, so
yeah,
they didn't have an opportunity to suck.
Sales.
Well, sales don't equal quality. Don't I know it? There have been plenty of albums or artists that I'm sure we've all championed in our life and just never understood why they didn't take off. It's like, how do people not know this? This is like the best kept secret. Kai, I am biased in my opinion because I love everything from Nirvana. Well, there you go. See, that's the thing. If you're a homer, if you're what's called a homer, I used to be a Val Kilmer homer. Mm-hmm. Val Kilmer could do no wrong. Whatever Val Kilmer movie he was in was godlike. And then he started making all these direct to video movies. I'm like, okay, that's, the kind of the luster wore off. But before that, anything he ever did was gold. So I get that too. Mm-hmm. And you could say that I'm that way about ELO, but I'm also realistic that I understand people will not think that everything they've done is great. But yeah, so I am yes, even Batman Forever. Yes, he wasn't a great Batman. He was a really good Bruce Wayne though. He looked weird as Batman because of his lips, but it was just strange, but he was a really good Bruce Wayne because it was more detective trying to figure out the riddles and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of liked it. Supposedly there's a hashtag going around, release the Schumacher cut. Supposedly there's another cut of Batman Forever that's a little bit more serious. There's some more stuff in there. Yeah. Less neon. I don't know if that's possible, but
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of strange.
You know, Batman Forever, and you know what? If you look at Batman and Robin versus Batman Forever is Citizen Kane compared to
Yeah.
Batman and Robin.
Yeah.
Because that one was just totally,
No.
total garbage. I
would
think
like
I
to
saw
see that.
I think I saw Batman and Robin twice just to verify that it sucked. I couldn't believe how horrible it was, so I had to go see it again. And it was just awful. And I was like, yeah, Joel Schumacher, time to take away your director's chair. You don't get to play anymore.
What do you?
And he had done other great stuff, but
Artists.
anybody have an artist that bat at 1,000? They think bat at 1,000 could do no wrong.
What about somebody like White Stripes, or Jack Johnson, or
Those are strong. Those are strong contenders. Those are very consistent. And again, like what Nick said, is you can't look at album sales. You have to look at quality of the albums. And Kylie's, I don't know if they had a bad album to anyone else, but Gorillaz had a clean sweep in her book.
Andy won't agree with you there. Andy.
Gorillaz just came out with a limited edition action figure set. The Gorillaz. Pretty expensive, and they did a really nice job. They're really tall. The figures are like really tall. So if you're into the Gorillaz and collecting, they just came out with a set now of these really nice action figures. See, I'm hip to everything.
For sure.
I'm hip to everything, and I know nothing.
Square. Hip to be square.
There you go. Huey Lewis and the News. They had a perfect run. No. Beastie Boys, Elizabeth.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. Yep.
She might have hit it.
Mm-hmm.
She might have hit it. From Cookie Puss.
I think that was. I think Zach probably
put her up to that.
I think that was. Yeah. I think that was his choice. Well, how about the Doors?
Think some of those figures light up too. I want them. See, she knows. I'm talking about the Gorillaz again.
How about the Doors?
A lot of people would say that the Soft Parade was a clunker. That it wasn't, when you're looking at everything else they had done, it's got the horns on it and it's got some folky stuff. To me, it's not a miss. It's something different. But like you said, it's subjective. Not as extreme as Queen with Hot Space. Yeah. Right. But in that vein of all of a sudden there's horns on the album and all this kind of strange stuff. But I think there was enough Doors in there, like Wild Child and the Soft Parade and stuff like that, to retain, to kind of keep their head above water. Doors is a good choice. Like Nirvana, wish they had more.
I think.
The Truth Comes Out. He absolutely told me to put that. So that was the Beastie Boys via.
I know it.
Elizabeth, Zach via Elizabeth. She's the mouthpiece for him.
I think but today there's a lot of artists that are out there who are consistently putting out it's the care that they're putting into their work. They're not necessarily focusing on album sales as much, or at least it seems that way to me. I mean, to me, you look at a group like Lord Huron or Norah Jones or
so it's kind of stay the course.
Some of these new artists, they're just, because albums aren't really that important anymore, right? Well, they're trying to make it important by the work, I think, and so the effort, to me, it's like double the effort. So
yeah, I don't know.
I just feel like there's they don't even want to try something necessarily new, or if they're just trying to stay in that vein of just putting out consistently good work, and I think that's all they care about. Because album sales aren't really a thing anymore. I mean, it's not really.
Yeah, not really.
You got
but just because the nature of distribution and how stuff is consumed, it's in small bites, it's in singles, it's in Spotify.
I think people are in a lot more control over what they're doing too.
Yeah, because again, they distribute it themselves. They'll put it out on their own. They'll put it through their website. So they're not beholding as they were as much to anybody else, where they can at least be true to themselves. It still might not be that great, but they can still at least do that. Nick is saying, do posthumous albums tarnish the streak of albums that came out while the artist was alive?
It depends, I think.
I would say in the case of like Elvis Presley, sure, because they just start pile driving everything and every scrap of session that there was, whether it was good or bad. It just it just comes out like, oh, it was Elvis put it out, because people will buy it.
Hendrix,
and
same way.
like rabid fans,
Jimi
so
Hendrix, they keep
so
putting
it,
yeah.
I think it could. I don't think it'll tarnish the street if you're a music lover and that it's an after the fact thing. Zach says Tedeschi trucks. Wow, he's really he's bucking for a raise in the allowance, huh?
Allowance. He's on his own.
Oh, okay. Well, then he must want his birthday must be coming up soon, or he must want a loan.
No, I totally agree. They're pretty, like I said, they're because they're in total control of what they do. That's a band. They're arguably a live band first and foremost, but their studio work is pretty consistent in the sound. So, there you go. They're not going to make a bad album. Going in, they're not going to say
careful. Well, I don't think anybody goes in intending to make a bad album. I mean, they're trying to follow the direction and what they think is right at the time, right? So, Elizabeth, I love the album True Sadness by the Avett Brothers, but I have to say I don't dig the last track. I do. May It Last. It doesn't sound like them. Sounds moody bluesy. Just the song is a miss. I think they were trying to do something new with that song, but it doesn't fit with the rest of the album. I am H.O. and some shrugging shoulders after that too. It's like,
you know what? There are songs off this record that I'm like, I prefer the more rootsy sound to them. This album was a little bit more poppy for me. So, I love this,
I loved everything they did up until they put out an album called The Third Gleam, which I was just like, I bought it. I'm like, this is kind of a mess. They're kind of treading water. Sean, when they released the Nirvana single, You Know You're Right, years after Cobain died, it was one of the best songs out there. Some just cash in. Some just Johnny cash in.
Yeah. Or somebody's cashing in, like they're,
that's the thing nowadays is, we were just talking about that too. I think a couple of weeks ago, how all of a sudden there was about a month ago or 2 months ago, there was a rash. Every day I was reading about another artist that sold their catalog to a publishing company. Dylan did it. Then Stevie Nicks famously did it. Then Lindsey Buckingham did it. And I forget, all these artists all of a sudden just started selling their catalog and they get Linda Ronstadt, I think, did it as well. So they get the rights to their images. Linda Ronstadt didn't write songs, so her catalog is more like the image and the recordings. But and now you've got what Nick is kind of alluding to, even if it's not posthumous, someone else owns it, and they can do whatever they want. If they want to use it on a commercial, they could do that. Hopefully it'll be like, I would like to see box sets then of things, maybe, since someone owns it and they can say, well, we want to put out a, like they're doing with the Beach Boys right now with Feel Flows, that kind of a special edition. Who knows? But I guarantee you that whoever owns the publishing is going to do whatever, any way they can monetize it, they will. And unfortunately, it means you'll probably see a lot of this stuff in movies and in commercials and wherever they think there's some money to be harvested, they'll do it. So that's kind of it too, is it kind of made me sad. I would always think of those, the publishing rights, especially from someone like Stevie Nicks or Dylan, as like a legacy that you would want to pass down to your children, to your heirs. Like that's where the value is, right? I would think. They have all these studio sessions or snippets would never be heard in an album. That's their Nirvana, I think we're talking about. So that's the new thing is people selling off their catalogs and then and cashing out, and then all these conglomerates. And it was basically one major publishing company that was really just snapping everything up and buying it all. I don't know, that kind of gave me an ick feeling.
Why do you think it is though? I mean, is it because they're not earning enough?
I don't know if I don't know if it was
they can't, the albums, like I said before, albums aren't really doing
it. Seemed like it was it almost seemed to me like it was a reaction to the pandemic, because no one was able to tour.
Nobody could tour. They weren't,
and all these bands are make their money on touring nowadays. So I think it might have been a knee-jerk reaction of, well, we don't know if we're ever going to be able to tour again or whatever. I'm 70 something and Dylan is 80 something, but he's gonna tour until he's in a pine box and they're rolling him out, and they'll just pose him with his arm on his
that'll
side.
be the show.
Yeah, it'll be the final piece of art from him.
The band will be playing, and you just hear.
Yeah,
just
and
hear
he'll be
a
silent,
pine.
and everyone will love it. But I don't know. I think that it might have been a kind of a knee-jerk reaction to the pandemic. And Nick saying, they have all these studio sessions or snippets were never to be heard on an album. A good producer or engineer might make a sound halfway decent to at least sell, but the artist might not have third. Yeah. See, now there's the thing. Let's say you bought, they have the Dylan catalog, right? So they own everything or whatever the scope of it is, which is probably everything. They might start to mine all this stuff that Dylan might have said, I don't want to release this or whatever, but now he's got no say, right? It could be like, we're doing it no matter what, because we own it and we're going to monetize it. And the fan, and then if you have the rabid collector, Dylan fans, they'll buy whatever comes out, repackaged, redone.
Yeah, to me, it's kind of odd because he is releasing a lot of like the bootleg series. You think of that, and there's a lot of content on how many volumes are out there right now of this thing, and they're up to like in the double digits. Yeah. And why? Like, is there even more of this? Well, I guess so. So how much more bootleg stuff are we going to get?
Well,
Lucas would start.
Yeah, well, you know what though, Nick, the tide is starting to turn, because from what I've been reading, George Lucas is trying to wrest back creative control of Star Wars from Kathleen Kennedy and company at Fox or whoever. Just creative control. Not he sold the rights, but he's trying to get back in there. I never thought I'd say I'd be happy to hear that, but because after the first trilogy, what could be worse? Well, the third trilogy could be. So it is. I think Lucas has buyer's remorse, right? I think he probably saw the big payday, sold it. So on the one hand, saw what a crappy job they did with the saga. Right, which could be a bad album by a great artist, as they're horrible movies by a great franchise. But then also saw on the flip side the hope that the Mandalorian shows, like, there's actually people that care about this, and I'd like to work with them, maybe, and help realize or help guide that.
Well, he did. Right? He worked with Filoni.
Yeah.
Lucas,
so I think
he taught Filoni everything he knows.
So so I think it's a little bit of both.
He's the man now. Like, Filoni is in creative control.
Yeah.
At this point.
I think it's buyer's remorse. I think he sold it and then realized, he was probably just so tired with it and probably said, I'm done. But then when he sold it, I think it's like, probably shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, but it's a fickle thing. It's like, you never know what's going on in these people's heads. It's like, I got to concentrate more on my family. Then he starts talking about wanting to do more like other types of movies and documentaries.
He's never going to direct another. He's never going to direct another film again.
That's the baffling
He's never
thing.
going
it's like,
to.
You
don't have to worry about you'll never hear coming from George Lucas. You'll never hear that trailer from you'll never hear from the director of Star Wars a new film.
He did do that animated one. What was that?
See, Nick, stop poking. Let's see what happens with Indiana Jones. They had a guy on the set. The stuntman was wearing a Harrison Ford mask.
Yeah.
As they were filming the stunts.
Yeah, but that's your boy Mangold, though.
It is. We'll see. I don't know.
So
Tool only had 5 studio albums, but all are solid.
Yeah.
There you go.
I'm kind of liking what I'm seeing. They got a train. Obviously, it looks like there's going to be some flashbacks happening in this film, back to World War II, and but hey, that's your boy Mangold. So let's see if he could pull it off.
Yeah, he said he wanted to go make small films. Haven't seen one yet. He said that a while ago. I think the small film he wanted to make was Howard the Duck.
No, didn't he just work on some animated film like just a couple of years back? It was some
doing what?
He was the producer or writer. I think he wrote some of it or something. I don't know.
I have to find it. There's a hysterical video on YouTube of this guy he's like in California. It's a random guy on the street. He's like making a video. He's like making a selfie video. and George Lucas happens to walk by in the back, and he thought that the guy was going to ask to interview him. So George Lucas like stops, and the guy's just doing his own thing, and then George Lucas like walks into the CVS.
I saw that.
You saw that, right? Like the guy's just like videotaping until like George Lucas with his plaid shirt and his blue jeans, like, and his white sneakers walks by and like stops and looks at the camera like, oh, they're going to ask me something.
Yeah.
Like, no, they don't.
Yeah,
Nick, has Pink Floyd made a bad album? Yes, because Eric had already said that the final cut, which was the final album with Waters et al. and crew, was a misfire, and the infighting had already kind of done it. In the future, let's do a Mandalorian chat. Absolutely, we can do one. Maybe we'll do one just before season 3. We can certainly do a Marvel one as well. Loki just came out today, and I caught the first episode of that, and that was really good. And I love that Marvel's just doing different. Every one of them is different. So we could absolutely do a Mandalorian. Maybe we'll get some. I want to get more. I want to get guests on screen as well. You walked in late. You know what, Nick? Don't come in late, man. Just get here. I know you were out, but you know, you could do it on your phone while you're. No, don't do it on your phone while you're driving. I didn't. No, sorry. Get home late and it's fine. What were you doing? I was watching these two idiots on Facebook, and the cop's like, all right, well, whatever. That's fine. We'll let it go. We won't ticket you. And then they're like, fooled you. Yes, we will. Here's your ticket, $500. But yeah, I'd like to do a Mandalorian chat or so. I mean, that's the only property right now that's even vibrant in Star Wars. The Bad Batch. I'm not an animated person, but the Bad Batch doesn't. I don't hear it lighting up the skies and everyone's raving about it. It's still kind of slow.
It's a slow burn. I think it'll get better.
So I think the Mandalorian is the one that right now is kind of is carrying the water for Star Wars and carrying the mantle, at least till the book of Boba Fett gets opened to chapter 1.
I'm looking forward to that book.
The book of Boba Fett. So does anybody else have any albums that were or any groups that were 1,000%? We heard Tool, we heard the Beastie Boys, we heard Nirvana. You know what? If we were doing a show, I would make Eric. The rule would be it has to be more than 3 albums. It's not fair to only have 2. How could you miss? Mm-hmm. So, but no, that's another good one. So it was Beastie Boys, Tool, Nirvana was in there, as well as artists that did not miss. I'm still going to advocate that the Police did not miss. Just because their first album wasn't as popular doesn't mean it wasn't setting the groundwork, setting the framework, and putting them on the path towards what they were doing. Foo Fighters. What about Foo Fighters?
I don't know. I mean, their earlier work I'm familiar with, but the later stuff I haven't really listened to, so I really couldn't say. But Dave Grohl is definitely doing some like.
You two had some clunkers, especially later on. I think after. Well, I mean, for me, it would be Achtung Baby. After that was Zooropa, I think it was called, or Pop. Mm-hmm. I forgot what it was. I think it was called Zooropa. And then How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb. And then after that, I kind of lost track. And I think, one of the I'll give credit to one of the bands that stopped was REM. REM kind of cashed out and said, you know what, we're not going to continue. It's the handwriting is on the wall. Probably there's no reason to. I'd like to see them reform and do a tour. They don't have to. There you go, REM Monster. They kind of said, you know what, let's just kind of end this now and sail off into the sunset and let everybody remember what was, which was sad for a lot of the who's an encyclopedia? Me? Encyclopedia Brown. I was once called a vat of useless knowledge, and I carry that badge proudly. As a vat of useless knowledge.
That's what it's all about, ain't it?
This is the only logical outlet for a vat of useless knowledge is to sit here and spout these things and
that on and on and on about this. Nope.
My brain is stocked with knowledge of stuff that is just. But then I go to work tomorrow and I can't remember if I hired somebody or not, if they're starting a new teammate.
Oh, that's
But I could tell you like what year Count Chocula came out, was first released. So anyway, no such thing. So yeah, I'd like to do a Mandalorian or some type of a Star Wars rant, like love hate. You know, maybe someone could be the prosecution.
Oh
Abba,
man, that would be
okay. Yeah. You know what? I don't have the whole discography of ABBA, but I've listened to almost everything. I would make the case that there was no misses. ABBA was just an iconic group, but they're not their catalog is not well known enough. Like everyone knows their hits, and if you know their hits, their non hits are I'll tell you are of the same quality. I could tell you that much. And ABBA is supposed to be releasing sometime at the end of the year 5 new songs that they've recorded.
Even their later stuff, like their last couple.
Yeah, they got electronic, but you had a powerhouse writing duo, you know, of Benny Anderson and Bjorn Ulvaeus, and those guys were they wrote everything. They were like a self-contained unit. So
and then Frida went off and made her first solo record with Phil Collins.
One of many where you just the drum. It's like, is this a Frida song or is this a Phil Collins drum song?
Which I think was a really. It was a good pop record.
Okay, so let's get the definitive word from you because you didn't bring it up.
Mm-hmm.
What's the Phil Collins miss?
For me?
Yeah, Phil Collins.
Probably when he around the time of But Seriously, you know, and the albums. I didn't really pay attention past the one he did after Both Sides.
Mm-hmm.
Both Sides, he tried to do the face value thing where he came, you know, the thing about that record is they played everything on it, which really isn't, it's a lot of keyboards and drums and such, but it's all him. There's nobody else on it. And then he did Testify, I think, or the one Dancing in the Light. I didn't really pay attention to those records at that point. I wasn't really, I kind of fell out.
Dancing to the Light wasn't a Genesis song. That was Phil Collins.
That was Phil.
Okay.
Yeah.
It became so interchangeable at that point.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like after No Jacket Required, it was kind of the same sound consistently, much more poppy, and I never cared for the poppy stuff. I always cared.
No Talent Required.
I always enjoyed his R&B side better than his pop side. You know.
Yeah.
So even like Hello, I Must Be Going, I didn't think it was as good as Face Value.
I loved it. It was one of my faves. One of my faves.
So,
alrighty.
You know.
Well, I was funny because when I was thinking about the subject, I was actually thinking that it was easier. It would have been easier to apply this subject to movies because, like you had said earlier, you said like artists are so in control or have more control because they're actually, you know, like you could use a group, you could use a solo artist. They're the one that's creating, right? And then they're presenting it to the record company. And the record company can say, well, yeah, yes, no, maybe so. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of on them. But when you're talking about a movie, it is such a collaborative effort. And in the end, the studio is paying for it with the intent that we want to make money on this. And we have to make money. And we're paying like all these hundreds, sometimes thousands of people involved, you know, where you know, they have a little more say where the studio will be like, no, cut this, or it's too long, or, you know, like we don't want to see that. It's not going to, you know, the ending doesn't play well. You don't really see an album get released and then they change it, you know, where you see the movie kind of will be, you don't see an album get screened and then they say, pull this out, you know, or take that or change it. But you see movies get screened and the test audience say, well, that was horrible. That sucked or whatever. They famously did that with the recent movie Cats, where the effects were so horrible that they were basically unfinished. That like a couple of weeks into its beginning run, they sent out new prints and said we fixed some of the crappy effects. It's like, how did you put it out? How did you put it out in the first place?
I don't know. I mean, you know, a lot of
throw it in a litter box.
I'm so like
today. Did you get that? Did you get that?
Yes, I got that.
Like Cats litter box.
Okay. No? Moving on.
Damn. Man. All right.
No, I just in today's you know world. I mean, it's I don't know who's in charge anymore.
Yeah.
You know, this debacle with Warner Brothers right now.
Yeah,
They're
it's about money. I mean, that's the bottom line is you have to understand if you're in that creative, we are not subsidized by any corporate overlords. So we still have full control over our content until the day we do sell out. And I think we're going to sell out to Tropicana orange juice, and they will be our corporate overlords. And then we'll have the orange juice inside all these containers, and then they will tell us what kind of content we can have. But until then, it's going to be yet. Not yet. But yeah, it's nowadays it's all about money, right? Just like the buying of artist catalogs is about money. It's about monetizing it. These studios buying different studios, Amazon purchasing the MGM catalog. It's because they're trying to keep up with Netflix and Hulu and these other streaming services by having content. So in the end, do we benefit? I suppose, but it's not really about making me happy that the MGM catalog is available or whatever it is. It's about having this so you can continue to pay, and they can continue to monetize, unfortunately. But like I said, our podcast is free. It will always be free. And we're going to continue to bring you free content and stuff like this. We've had a lot of fun tonight. This was another great episode. I do need to plug once again, our friend Sean Grady is going to be on our Glengarry Glen Ross episode tomorrow. So please go ahead and share that episode, listen to it, check it out. The greatest thing you can do is share, honestly, is get it out past the friends and family and past our, the people that currently listen. We're on the precipice of a giant milestone, very close to it. So it's very exciting, and we're almost there. We actually will share this with this small group here. But we can actually say we hit worldwide penetration because, in the stats we get, there was one continent that we hadn't had any listeners from, and it was Africa. And we finally showed up two listeners. There were two people in Africa that caught our podcast. So we have officially hit worldwide status. We're in we hit the Australian market, we hit Europe, we hit Japan, actually Moscow, Russia. We've got listeners if they're in the gulag or if they're drinking vodka. I'm not sure what they're doing, but they're listening to the podcast as well. England, South America, it's everywhere.
Gulag.
In the gulag.
Wow.
What? No?
Okay.
They have like the MP3 player from like 50 years, like the little one, and it can fit like one podcast on it. They can fit like one file at a time, and they have to smuggle it in. Wow. But we have done that, and it's pretty amazing. It's pretty humbling. But again, sharing the podcasts and sharing the links does wonders for us. It helps us spread. So we thank you for that. Like I said, tomorrow's Glengarry Glen Ross with the great Sean Grady, who, again, some inside information. Sean Grady did have an opportunity to perform Glengarry Glen Ross, and I know because I was there. So he's bringing a pretty unique perspective to this discussion as well, because he was actually someone that actually had to perform the material, which was great. So definitely check that out, share it. We'll do another live show in a couple of weeks. Until then, we thank you for your support as always. Just it's humbling, and we went a little bit over, but we always have fun. If you've got ideas for subjects, shoot it to us, because that's half the fun. Most of the fun, 90% of it, is hearing what the chat has to say and bouncing off that and having that spark our conversation. Mm-hmm. That's really where the fun is. So send us some recommendations or episode recommendations. If you want to guest on an episode, we can make that happen as well. Because I'm certainly, I only have a certain amount of words I'm ever going to speak in my life. Yeah, and the more podcasts we do, the less words I'm going to have.
We'd love to see some faces on this thing. Some more live chats would be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
We certainly our loyal followers are so getting you guys on there even would be fantastic.
Yeah.
We're looking at you, and Nick Lachey, and
if you do a podcast, you get a magnet.
There you go.
So
maybe even a hat.
We have new hats coming out. I just did a redesign of hats. So we've got some hats coming too. So we're going to do another giveaway as well. So we like to do that. We like to kind of throw stuff and keep the engagement going. So we're going to end it there. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate it. Keep the likes following and the follows coming, and we're going to keep the content coming. Again, one final plug. Glenn Ross. Check it out tomorrow. Starts. It'll be up in the morning when you wake up, so you'll see us starting to plug it. We've got some funny ads coming out for it too, so hopefully you'll enjoy that. If you like the ads we made for it, give us a thumbs up and share those because I think they're kind of clever. Season 4, Karate Kid is coming up. Good topic for throwbacks. Yeah, we can definitely do a throwback. What's old? I think we could do what's old is new again episode.
That'd be great.
See, I'm quick with the titles. Like the titles just kind of come pretty quick. I want a hat. I want a hat.
I want a hat. Okay.
Oh, that's right. Nick already has that. I sent him. Nick won the bag. Nick won the 3324 tote, and he got some magnets in there too.
He's got the tote.
Big Lebowski. That's a good one. That's a good one to do too.
Sure.
There's oh God, John. There's so many Coen Brothers movies too that we could.
That's I would Raising Arizona.
Oh brother.
That's in Kelly's wheelhouse. She loves that one.
Oh brother, Big Lebowski. Yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah,
there's a lot there. That's a good one. And ABC always be closing. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna close it out. We're not gonna drag you through this any further. We appreciate it. Everybody have a great day. Have a great. I have a lot to say if you do an old is new thing. All right, well then we can get you on there. I'll tell you that you're just gonna keep me going. I'm not gonna shut up if you keep putting comments, and we're gonna go. That's the big thing, right? Is all these revivals is digging up these casts, Saved by the Bell and Full House, and obviously most recently the Friends reunion just happened, but kind of Will and Grace, like all these revivals of shows that people want to watch again for some reason, and they're becoming and there's absolutely a second life. Cobra Kai was a big one. Really bizarre. So I think let's save it, let's table it, because we're gonna ruin it, and there's a lot we could do. So I think we're gonna take that idea from Dwight, is throwback episode. And maybe we'll get a guest, and we'll do throwback. We'll do throwbacks for the next one.
That most definitely.
Right.
Since we got 2 people who want it, so if we get 2 or more people that want the same thing, we got to do it for the next show. So
they need content, and all these shows have name recognition. Exactly. All right, we got to stop. If we get Nick, save that. Copy and paste that into your notepad on your computer. Save that comment, because we're gonna need it for the next live cast. So we're gonna let you go. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate it. Stay safe, share, spread. We appreciate the support. Take care, everybody. Have a good night, and we'll see you soon. And we'll see you online. Absolutely. Take care. Be good.
Good night, everybody.
Hang on. We actually have an end video. So here it comes. It's like the bonus features, but here's the end video, and that's going to let you guys go, because we're really professional now. So we even have an end video. Take care, everybody. Be good. See you soon.
You've been listening to the 3324 podcast with Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider, so please like, subscribe, and rate to become a part of the 3324 family. Your feedback is important, so make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at 3324 Podcast, and on Twitter at 3324P to join the conversation.